Your son is gone. He was weak and foolish like his father. So I destroyed him.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Weak and Foolish Movie Podcast. My name is Mike Tang, and with me is
Job Eng.
In this episode, we will be discussing our top 10 films of 2019. Now, this is an episode I've been looking forward to for a very long time. For movie fans, top 10 lists are a thing you just do. And top 10 films of the year lists are probably the most exciting to compile and share with other movie fans. In the past, towards the end of the year, I feel like Job and I would just give our weekly updates on what our top 10 lists were. After a new movie I would watch, I would text him my updated list and vice versa. But this year, we deliberately didn't discuss anything, so we have no idea what our lists are, and now we're about to find out. And I'm very stoked to see what some of, Job, your favorite movies were for 2019. For those of you tuning in for the first time, each of our podcast episodes usually begins with a non-spoiler discussion, followed by a spoiler discussion. But for the purposes of today's episode, we will only be discussing the films in non-spoiler detail. The goal is here to recommend these films to whoever's listening, our friends or family members who may not have had a chance to see some of these movies. So we won't divulge any plot details today. We'll just explain why we loved each movie. So before we begin, I just wanted to recap 2019 because I think it was a very unique year for movies. The first 10 months of the year were pretty slow, in my opinion, in terms of really high caliber films. I couldn't even form a top 10 list because there hadn't been enough movies that I loved that much. So not that the movies were terrible, but I just hadn't felt anything strong about them. But the last 2 months of the year, November and December, they're jam-packed with spectacular movies. I felt like every week a new movie would be released that garnered high praise from critics and audiences. And it got to the point where every movie I watched was shaking up my list, and it made it really difficult to decide what should even be in my top 10. Job, I just wanted to ask you, how did you feel about 2019 in terms of movies? Was this your experience as well? Did you feel the same way?
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of times when I log a film on Letterboxd or whatever, I give it a rating and I think, man, am I just on a high from watching this film? It's like I just watched this. I just got out. I'm really excited. 5 out of 5. In the same way as I was compiling this list, I felt the same way. Towards the end of the year, so many new films were entering the top 10, and I won't go into too much further because I'm going to spoil like what might be in there. But it certainly shook up a lot of my my list at the end of this year. I can't remember a stronger year in movies overall. I mean, it kind of feels backloaded, but there were a lot of strong films early on in the year too. And I just think it's been a good refreshing thing to kind of have an enjoyable film to watch throughout the year, or something I actually truly enjoyed or like looked forward to. There wasn't a dead period really, and even some of the films that weren't so strong were still really enjoyable. I don't think there's any. So what I did is I have a list of every film I watched that came out in 2019, and I would rank all of them, and even the ones towards the bottom, I didn't hate any movie this year. I think actually that's not true, but we'll get to that. So yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean. Like towards the end of the year, like I said, right, I felt like every movie I was watching was really awesome, like high caliber film. And right. I really started questioning myself, is this recency bias or are these actually great films?
Yeah.
Another thing I think you mentioned that I kind of want to bring up, I was going to bring it up at the end of the episode, but since you mentioned it, I'll just talk about it here. But there's an app for movie lovers called Letterboxd. That's Letterboxd. Letterboxd. And it's an app for movie lovers where you can basically log all the movies that you've seen. So after I watch a movie, I'll just enter it into the app, and then it'll show up on a news feed, kind of like in Instagram and Facebook where you see people's posts on pictures or articles. On Letterboxd, you actually see what all your friends have been watching and when. So I'll see that Joe saw 1917 last night and he really liked it. So that
Yep.
it's just a really cool way to kind of see and have that sense of community amongst movie fans. And you can easily create top 10 lists and look at other people's lists. It's a really easy system. And it also collects stats. How many movies did you give 5 stars, 4.5 stars, 4 stars? How many movies did you watch in 2019? How did you rate them? So it's a really cool app. We both started using it in 2019, and I think we're going to continue to use it from now on. So yeah, just wanted to give a shout out to this awesome resource for movie lovers.
Yes.
All right, so for those who are listening, we will both start off by giving our number 10 films. So Job's going to go first, then give his number 10, and then I'm going to give my number 10. And then we will work our way up to our number 1 movie of the year. Then afterwards, we will be discussing some honorable mentions for movies that didn't make it into our top 10. And then finally, we'll end this episode with our top 5 most anticipated movies for 2020. So without further ado, Job, tell us, what is your number 10 film of 2019?
I hope you're all rolling a drum roll right now because the anticipation is killing you. No, I'm just kidding. My number 10 is a film called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood directed by Quentin Tarantino Nino. And I really love this film. I enjoyed kind of it really feels like a throwback movie in that there's a bit of a feeling of escapism, and it obviously takes place during a real golden age of Hollywood when a lot of film stars were larger than life. But what I really enjoyed was also just some of the not so glamorous parts, the parts that are off the screen where you see how these actors and in Hollywood function. Leonardo DiCaprio gives a great performance. It is kind of standard starter pack Leo in that he yells a lot and is really dramatic, and there's a lot of shots of his piercing blue eyes, and Brad Pitt does a great job in this film too. And Margot Robbie does. It's a good ensemble cast, really enjoyable. And Tarantino just has a way of making his movies look gritty, but also golden. I don't know if you know what I mean, Mike, but it's kind of got this like glamorous grit to it. And it's probably because he shoots on film still. But yeah, that's my number 10. We did an episode on this too.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that movie. I love Quentin Tarantino, and I think this is definitely one of his better films. I totally see why it's in your top 10. Cool. My number 10 is a film called The Irishman.
Yes.
This is the gangster film of a cinephile's dreams. If I told you the cast for this movie, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, they're the trinity of gangster movies, right? These guys are in like everything. I feel like that's enough. Just those 3 guys in one movie, that's enough to get people excited. Just those 3 guys alone. But then to top it all off, this is written and directed by Martin freaking Scorsese. So this is the gangster film, right? But what's surprising to me is it's actually very far from what you would expect from a Scorsese gangster film starring these 3 guys. It's a huge contrast from what he's known for, which was Goodfellas. And in that movie, he made it when he was 47 years old. It was briskly paced, had amazing cuts and camera moves, really quick, snappy dialogue, lots of yelling. And despite what the film shows, is trying to say, Goodfellas actually glamorizes the life of a gangster. It made it really cool and made them look really tough. Scorsese is now 77, and he's had a lifetime of stories to look back and reflect on. And I think The Irishman is an amazing companion piece to Goodfellas, and how it is a complete contrast. This film is very slow-paced. It's very quiet. It's extremely meditative. It takes all the glamour out of the gangster genre, and it views it from an older man's point of view. Someone who is near the end of his life, looking back at everything that it cost him. It's a really long movie. It's 3 hours and 30 minutes, but I think it's a must-see for anyone who loves the genre, who loves these actors, and who loves the filmmaker. So yeah, this is my number 10, The Irishman.
Nice.
Okay, Job, what is your number 9?
My number 9 is a film called The Farewell, written directed by Lulu Wang. And what I really loved about this film is, first of all, I identify a lot with this movie in that I am Asian American, just as Awkwafina's character is, and there's a lot here that kind of captures what it feels like to live in, to really be immersed in two really polar opposite cultures. There's Eastern culture and there's Western culture, and for an Asian American, we're kind of just in the middle of it all, and it's this roiling storm of different cultures, different mindsets, and I found a lot of personal enjoyment from following and watching this movie. I would recommend it to anyone, but especially to those of us, those of our friends who listen who are Asian American and you haven't made it out to see this, go find it on any on-demand or streaming service that you can find it, and really just watch it, and maybe watch it with your parents and your family too. I think it would be a really healing experience because everything's just portrayed fairly, and what I really love about this movie is it's just kind of a portrait of life. There's no... A lot of times in films, sometimes they kind of push you towards a certain mindset or pull you away from a certain mindset and kind of lightly preach at you or like in your face preach at you. But this film kind of just presents what life is like, and this is what it is, and it's very gentle and very warm and very heartfelt. So number 9, The Farewell.
Awesome. Yeah, I love this movie too, and I totally agree with you. It felt really great to see an Asian American story represented on the screen, and
Yes.
love the performances too. In addition to what you were saying, like I felt like everyone did such a great job with the acting. You know, the grandmother to Awkwafina to the parents, they sold all the characters so well.
Agreed.
All right, my number 9 film is Little Women. This is the best crossover movie of the year after Avengers Endgame. And what I mean is that the cast is just stacked, right? We got Saoirse Ronan, Emma Watson, Florence Pugh, Laura Dern, Meryl Streep. There are scenes where I fanboyed for reasons having nothing to do with this movie. There was a scene with Laura Dern and Meryl Streep. They're talking, and then that was a Big Little Lies reunion. That was really cool to see both of them in another movie set in a different time period. And then Florence Pugh comes in with a crown of flowers on her head, like Midsummer. It was just like bizarre to see all these different people from all these bigger other movies, really noteworthy movies and shows, and then they converge into this one movie. But in all seriousness, I felt like Little Women was just really well made. All the actors are so good in their roles. Everyone is very charming and lovable. Each character is clearly defined. And they all have, I felt like, an equal amount of time on screen together and then also separately. I feel like this story has been adapted several times already in movie form, but Greta Gerwig injects really nice contemporary touches into how it's told. Something unique, I think, about this adaptation is that the events unfold in non-linear fashion, jumping back and forth between past and present. So overall, it was a lot of fun. It was very engaging. There was a lot of drama in turns. I feel like it's the ultimate soap opera because it's based on a really old story, and it's a fantastic film. Highly recommend it. And it's very tasteful and sweet and very wholesome.
Yes, awesome choice. I agree. Give Greta Gerwig any project she wants. I will watch it.
It's a darn I mean, it's a darn shame that she got snubbed by the Oscars, because really, I felt like even more so than Lady Bird, I feel like this was an even stronger film for her.
I agree.
Yeah. So I don't know what they're up to, but oh well. Joe, let's hear your number 8 film.
All right, number 8. Yeah, this might be a surprise. Is Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Number 8. This film is not here because it's a achievement in cinema. It's not here because it's a masterpiece of any sort. But it is here because it is Star Wars, and I love Star Wars. This film is a movie that had to do a lot. It had to close up the story of 42 plus years in the making when George Lucas first made this space opera in 1977 called Star Wars. And to close up a story that long and that spanning that amount of time is a huge achievement. And I think that J.J. Abrams and company did a great job of closing up as much as they could. And it didn't satisfy everything I would have liked. It didn't satisfy some of the questions I still had. And it also introduced a lot of new questions. But overall, it was an enjoyable ride. And I really loved seeing the cast together. Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, and Poe Isaac, Oscar Isaac together. Their chemistry is great. And the way they play off of some of the legacy characters is really special too. And to incorporate Carrie Fisher one last time into a film was really meaningful. It was a big deal. And so I would say this is my number 8 movie of the year because it's an enjoyable, fun ride. Not because it's really great or anything. There are a lot of flaws, a lot of issues. But if you want to hear more about our thoughts, you can go to our episode of that.
I like how you mentioned Leia just now and how that was handled, because in the episode where we talk about Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, we actually forgot to mention how the film handled Leia and Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
So, totally. Like, I love how that was all done. It felt very fitting for the saga. I don't know. I just, I don't feel like it was a satisfying culmination for like a 40-year saga. It felt like a closer for the trilogy, but not so much episodes 1 through 9. I personally want to see more because there are certain things I think in a conclusion to a franchise this long that it should have had and it didn't. So I'm hoping we do get more. I'm hoping it does continue despite the fact that they said this is the end. But I don't know. We'll see.
Totally fair. Yeah. Totally fair.
My number 8. Yeah, my number 8 is Marriage Story. The writer-director Noah Baumbach, he is able to blend really serious emotional drama with laugh-out-loud comedy. It's a really crazy tonal juggling act that he does so perfectly, and I think it's so evident in this movie. It's a huge gut punch that I feel like it brings us through the process of divorce and the emotional beats that a separation like this might feel like. I love how so much information in the movie is conveyed through costume and production design. And you can't say that about a lot of movies. Like, for example, both Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson's characters, they consult different lawyers for the divorce. And you see so much in the offices of the lawyers, how it's decorated, the colors, even the clothing that they wear. It communicates so much about the lawyer themselves and what they represent. And I think it's a fantastic way to show, not tell, and something that's unique to the film medium. And Adam Driver, Scarlett Johansson, they are fantastic. It's so great to see them both in these roles as regular, everyday people. It's very different than what we're used to seeing them as, in the action, fantasy genres that they're mostly known for. So, really great film, really small, intimate film. And I really enjoy the performances.
Excellent. I have thoughts on this that we will talk about later.
A
small teaser there.
Oh, okay. All right. Your number 7.
My number 7 is one you've mentioned, The Irishman. I adored this film. I sat down to watch it on Netflix, and just to give you a taste of like the distracted nature of my movie watching habits. I if I'm alone and no one's around, I'm going to be distracted by a movie or by other things. My phone's going to go off, or I'm going to need to use a restroom. I get hungry and grab a bag of chips. But for this movie, being 3 hours plus long, I stayed put the whole time. I was riveted to my seat. I couldn't move. It wasn't like it wasn't a thriller or anything. It wasn't something that you would think could hold someone's attention, but just the gravitas of the actors on the screen and the nature of the subject matter, really a deconstruction of the gangster genre, kind of like what you mentioned before, was really fascinating to me. And let me just say, the de-aging technology to de-age Al Pacino and Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci in this film was as flawless as you can get, I think. There were a few moments in this movie where you could see kind of the pastiness of it. And also, there is one scene, not to spoil too much, where Robert De Niro kicks down a guy as he's supposed to be a 30-something-year-old, and it just doesn't work.
I know what you mean.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
He looks like he's like a 70-year-old man trying to kick someone, but he's supposed to be like 30 or 40.
That's right. Yeah, his face looks young, but his body is just kind of stiff. And God bless him. He did a great. He gave it all he had, but that's where the effects broke. But mad props to Martin Scorsese for taking risks, even as such an established filmmaker, and at his advanced age, to really kind of do almost a meta commentary on the movies that came before that he made, as well as pushing the limits of technology and really just saying, hey, we want to, like, the story calls for these guys to be young men, and we're going to use them, is just kind of phenomenal. And that is why it is in my top 10. That is why The Irishman is number 7.
Awesome. Yeah. Really great film. It's so long to get through, and to be honest, I had to pause it a couple of times just because my second son was recently born, and he kept interrupting us. So I definitely need to go back and rewatch it again. I'm sure I would appreciate it even more. It is my number 10 movie, but I think it might have been higher had it not been so long, or my son had not interrupted it so much. All right, my number 7 is Joker. Batman is actually my favorite fictional character of all time. He's been with me since I was a kid, and I actually enjoyed all the iterations of the character on screen. Batman and Robin came out when I was a kid, so I couldn't tell that it was not good. But this film takes the mythology of that world and brings it down to the level of Taxi Driver and Mean Streets. It's so dirty and grimy and real. This is a Gotham City that we haven't seen before. And I think the cinematography beautifully captures a city that's really on the verge of a revolution. Joaquin Phoenix's performance as a Joker is so nuanced and complex. He goes in a completely different direction than Heath Ledger did. But I put him actually on the same level as Heath Ledger's performance. They're both amazing. I'm not saying one is better or the other. I just think they're different takes on the character, and they're both legitimately memorable and amazing. And how it weaves the Joker story into the bigger world of Batman was actually very surprising and a lot of fun. I know the movie gets a lot of crap for not really having anything to say. It's very soft on its message, and maybe it's not clear enough. But in the end, it's a comic book movie, and it's just a comic book movie adapted into like the real world, as real as it can be. And I appreciate it for what it is. So yeah, my number 7 is Joker.
Nice. Honestly, Mike, I'm surprised so far. I'm surprised at how different our lists are. This makes me excited as we get through it. Some more.
Yeah, I am. I mean, I actually agree with you on all your picks, but yeah, it's so surprising. Just how none
kind of
of
the
our
order of it all.
yeah. So far, the only overlap we've had was The Irishman. That's the only movie
Yeah.
we've shared so in common so far.
So far. Let us see. Yeah, I agree with you on Joker. It's a well crafted film. As I was watching it, I thought this is so good, but I was also so creeped out and unsettled by kind of what I was seeing. So I don't know if I would wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone, but it is a great film and a work of art. I believe. So I agree with you on that. So.
Yeah, definitely, it's not for the faint of heart. If you can't handle
No.
things that are like disturbing images or like really dark scenes that make you feel terrible for the characters, definitely
Yeah.
avoid this film. All right, Joe, what is your number 6?
Sorry, one more thought on that film. If that's all right. I think the movie has a lot to say. Actually, it's just not saying what most people want it to say. So that's just a thought.
I would say that there are maybe other movies that are probably on both of our lists that I think have a similar message as Joker, but they say it in a better way. And I'm sure we're gonna have some overlaps as we get towards the top of our list.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll
All
come
right,
back to
number
this
6,
discussion on Joker. Yeah, we'll come back to the discussion on Joker later. But yeah, you're number 6.
Okay, my number 6 is a Korean film called Parasite, by Bong Joon-ho. This film I just recently saw, just a couple weeks ago, and
After I had told you how many times to watch it.
and wow, yeah, I tried so hard to get into the theater to watch it, and schedule wasn't working out. But finally,
I'm just giving you a hard time.
I know. One funny thing was I texted Mike and said, "Hey, I'm watching Frozen right now." And he's like, "You're watching Frozen before Parasite?"
I remember.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I am. So, but yeah, Parasite. This movie is great. It's got great acting. I think the directing was sublime. It's about class. It's about kind of the differences in society, but it's also this. It feels like it's two films in one. The first act, it's kind of what you would expect from the trailers, and it's kind of this fun, kind of mischievous caper of a film, and then suddenly like the hammer just gets dropped and it shifts tone. It's a completely different movie, but it also fits because what I really love about this film is that it actually shows like a lot of the stuff at the beginning. If you're not paying close attention, you'll miss that ties into stuff that happens later in the film, and I love when movies do that, really. And so that's one thing that I really enjoyed about Parasite. There's a whole lot of stuff, but the acting was really solid too. And I will say one of the characters sounds like an anime villain, just like the deepness of his voice and the way he delivers it. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, Mike, but
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yes, I'm so glad. It took me out of the scene for a while, but then I got used to it. But I thought it was really funny at first. So that is my number 6.
That character, it sounded like it was dubbed, like his voice. That's
Yes.
not his actual voice, and it was dubbed over for some reason.
Yeah.
But that's how like weird it sounds. Like it's very deep and manly, but it doesn't fit the person saying it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Anyway,
Yeah. All
that's
right,
gonna be the takeaway everyone has from. That's what they thought of this movie, is the anime guy. Sorry.
All right, my number 6 movie is Uncut Gems, This is the most stressful movie I've ever seen, and what I mean is that by that is the main character digs himself into a hole and keeps digging further and further into the hole throughout the entire movie. He makes one bad decision after another, and we as the audience, we can do nothing but watch him plummet into this abyss. Whether you like the film or not, you have to concede to the brilliance of the Safdie brothers and how they've crafted such a roller coaster ride. I feel like the movie that this is most similar to is actually Dunkirk, believe it or not. Ooh, it's just a thrill ride from beginning to end. And one of my friends criticizes the movie. Like, he didn't like it because he felt like there wasn't anything about the characters. The characters kind of just stayed the same. I feel like you could say that about Dunkirk as well, right? It's not really about the characters. It's actually about creating this emotion that you feel, a sustained emotion throughout the entire film. And I feel like it's impossible to come out of this movie without feeling anything. The cast is awesome. Adam Sandler gives the performance of his life. Idina Menzel shows a drastically different side of her that we haven't seen before, a darker side. And then there's Kevin Garnett, KG. That dude is actually pretty good at acting. And how they weaved this story in with an actual NBA series, playoff series, it was awesome. Like, it was so much fun. I like the roller coaster ride. It didn't, it made me stressed out, but I kind of enjoyed roller coasters in that way. So, yeah, just a great film. But I don't recommend it for everyone. It is definitely a hard R film. Lots of swearing. I think it's in the top 10 list for most F words in a movie. So if that's not your thing, then definitely not for you.
Excellent. This is a film I didn't watch, so I have no thoughts on this. But I'm really glad you liked it. It's been on my list to go see, and kind of like with Parasite, I just haven't gotten out to see it. But
yeah, it's because you saw Star Wars 4 times.
That's right. December was busy. December was a busy month. So
yeah, for sure. Job has a big family, so lots of obligations.
Yeah, a lot of in-laws.
All right, so far in our top 10 from numbers 10 through 6, we've only had one overlap, which is The Irishman.
Yeah, and it's different placement too. So
yeah. All right. Well, now time for the top 5.
Oh, here we go. If your drums weren't rolling before, they better be now.
I'm at the edge of my seat.
Yeah, I'm like about halfway on my seat right now. Number 5. This is the next overlap is Marriage Story. We actually watched this together. As you, me, and our wives, and we had to go halfway through, but we finished it. This film affected me deeply. It, as kind of a more newlywed person, seeing kind of so I'm in that, like, everything's awesome, and obviously we have disagreements and things are hard, but we're in the early stages, and to kind of see the death of a marriage was really impactful, and it didn't really make me feel worried necessarily, because we are watching kind of a story of two people who don't have a faith, it seems, are pretty agnostic, and also just are just really caught up in world focused and self-focused mindsets and mentalities. It's just kind of interesting to see. It was definitely a strong portrait of marriage and the brokenness of this particular marriage that we're watching. But my huge takeaway also is just, like you mentioned before, the acting was spectacular. Adam Driver is so good at one moment being completely fallen apart and like broken and screaming his head off, and at other parts like really warm and vulnerable and even charming. And it just shows the wide range of this guy's acting. And Scarlett Johansson proves that she was more than just a Marvel superhero before this movie. She really did a great job too, of just kind of her eyes and the expressions in her eyes were really good. It communicated kind of like this ability to nearly fall apart but also be strong. So Marriage Story is my number 5. It was really up there. I love how the film was shot also. It looks really nice. I believe it was shot on film, but don't quote me on that. And it just kind of lent this real grounded reality to the whole, all the proceedings. So that is my number 5, Marriage Story.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of build off of what you just said, I think, neither of us, I mean, we're both relatively young in our marriages, and, God willing, neither of us gets a divorce, but I think the beauty of these movies like this, is that even though we may not have gone through that experience, the movie does such a great job of making us feel like what it would feel like, to separate, and the pain that it causes not just the spouses but also the children as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, my number 5 is Parasite, and you've already kind of talked about it. I kind of want to talk a little bit more about Bong Joon-ho. I think he's the Hitchcock of the 21st century. He's just a master of mixing genres and just twisting things around. He knocks it out of the park with this one. I didn't watch a single trailer for this movie before I saw it, and I was so glad I didn't. It's so unique and original, and that's not a word we can throw around these days. He's treading new territory here with this film, and I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't seen it. You guys already know, whoever's listening to this, you already know there's a character who sounds like an anime character, but that's it. That's about it, right? Like, we haven't really said much. So I don't want to divulge anything more about the story.
Yeah.
But I will say this is another film I saw late at night, and I was wide awake for the entire thing, from beginning to end. And there's a point in the middle of the movie where I was hooked. I was like at the edge of my seat. I would lean forward physically in my seat. I will say this though, it's not my favorite Bong Joon-ho movie. It's still Mother, which came out earlier this decade. But this is definitely a very close second place to Mother. So highly recommend Parasite. Please go see it. It is also not a movie for the faint of heart as well. So if you don't like suspense and thrillers, then this is not for you. But the social commentary in this movie is very biting. And I feel like it's way more clear in this film than it was in Joker. Yeah. All right, Job, your number 4.
Number 4 is a movie called Ford versus Ferrari. This film, I really enjoyed this film too. Christian Bale and Matt Damon both knock it out of the park, and each other. It's a great film. I think it's probably Matt Damon's best performance in years. I haven't particularly enjoyed anything he's done or anything I've seen that much in a while, and I don't know what it is, but he really got me this time around. He delivered a vulnerable performance, but also a really meaningful one. I think the movie itself is a great picture of the difference between kind of two warring motivations in car manufacturing, and really it's also about art versus commerce. In this film, obviously, it's about two car companies facing each other off and trying to prove that they have the better cars. Ford, the CEO of Ford, is made to look kind of like a mustachioed, twirling villain. I didn't particularly hate that. It kind of gave us some emotional anchor for the movie. But at the end of the day, it's about those who build the cars, who put the cars together and race them. And it's, a lot of times companies competing against each other is really just the egos of some of their higher ups trying to like outdo each other. And there's those in in underneath who are building out the machines that power their profits. And I just think it was a cool thing. It wasn't so preachy and high-handed as I'm making it sound, so I apologize to all of you guys. It's also thrilling. It's the cars racing on the track felt really visceral and real. I believe they shot a lot of it practically, and it's just a thrill ride from beginning to end. And Christian Bale also just was so good in this film. He is such a kind of a jerk, but such a lovable jerk in this movie. And so that is why Ford vs. Ferrari is number 4 on my list.
Awesome. I'm surprised to find this movie so high up in your list. Not that it wasn't good. Like, I really enjoyed it too. Super suspenseful and thrilling. Like, I love the way that the race scenes are cut together. They're taking full advantage of the camera technology now that's available, and how you can where you can place the camera on the car to give you that feeling of how fast you're going. I kind of wish the movie explored more about the Le Mans race. I was sitting next to my friend, our friend Derek Rover, during this movie,
Yes.
and he was actually explaining to me a lot about the racing culture and the culture around this huge race, this 24-hour race. So he was filling in details for me that I don't think the movie provided. So I kind of wish it kind of built up the race a little bit more. But, you know, not to take away anything from the movie, it is a brilliant piece of filmmaking. And yeah, I totally agree with you too. The performances were awesome. Yeah. Highly recommend it. It's really entertaining, and I think you know, the whole family can watch it. It's not like there's nothing dark or crass about it.
No, not at all. It's pretty wholesome, and I agree. Like, I did want to know more about the race that kind of they were all leading up to. Wish they kind of explored that or explained that a little better, but that's okay.
Yeah. All right,
Cool.
my number
What's your
four.
number 4?
Yeah, my number 4 movie is Knives Out. It's a film by writer-director Rian Johnson, and I feel like he understands genre so well and all the tropes in each genre. And every movie he's done, I feel like he's subverted genre conventions. From the detective story in Brick to Star Wars in The Last Jedi, he's done it again and again. And now he's doing it with the whodunit mystery genre. And I don't want to say too much about the plot details here either, because I think the less you know, the bigger the surprise. The cast is so stacked with some very surprising turns for each character. And the storytelling just grips you right from the beginning. It does a lot of fun things with the mystery. It keeps you invested until the very end. It's so much fun. I think it's even more impressive that it was done with such a small budget, and also with how fast he actually pumped this movie out. The movie also has a very clear message that isn't too preachy or ham-fisted. And I think it's something that every person, no matter what political background you come from, can agree on.
Yes.
I think, you know, in addition to, you know, we have Knives Out, Parasite, and Joker. They all kind of comment on similar things. So, yeah, I feel like this year was a year of movies just trying to provide some commentary on the state of the world. And I feel like Parasite and Knives Out together, they have a very sharp commentary, and definitely worth seeing it and worth talking about.
Yeah. I agree. I will save my thoughts.
All right, here we go. Top three of 2019.
Oh,
Job,
man.
what is your number 3?
Number 3 is a film I watched last night, 1917.
I knew it would be really high on your list.
Yes, this movie was so good. I feel like I start each review in this episode as this movie was so good, but I mean, what's a top 10, right? Anyway, this film really was a technical marvel. It was stunning in that I knew going in, okay, I had heard that this movie was shot, it made to look like it was all one shot, So I was looking for the seams, you know, kind of like where they kind of tricked it and stitched it so that, you know, it wasn't one shot, but they, you know, I couldn't find very many, which is just amazing to me. I was like, I'm on to you, Sam Mendes and Roger Deakins. I'm on to you. And I couldn't find very many of the seams, and that's just marvelous to me. It really kind of hooked me because I was looking for that. But then at the end of the day, when the movie kind of gets going, I stopped looking at that and started really sinking into the emotion of the story, and it's phenomenal. It's remarkable and it really communicated. I mean, most war movies will communicate how devastating war is, but this one to me is the most impactful I've seen in a long time in how cruel and miserable and just in a lot of ways nonsensical war is. And at the heart of it, it's a story of two soldiers who are just trying to do their job, but there was also familial connection there, and there was brotherhood, there was friendship, there was courage, there was perseverance, a huge range of emotions just kind of clashing all together in this splendid harmony of a movie that literally flows, because it's supposed to be like a one take sort of feel, and it really does flow, and it just looks remarkable. And Roger Deakins, he's the greatest of all time. I think he is the greatest. There was one scene in particular where my mouth was just open through the whole thing. Just the way the lights were being used and manipulated, and the way the camera was following the character, and I was just stunned. I was like, I can't believe I'm watching this. Like, I cannot believe this is real. Like, someone did this, and someone was holding a camera and achieved this. It was, I am gushing. So that is my number 3, 1917.
Well, Job, my number 3 is 1917 as well. I had a friend tell me, or I was telling one of my friends about this movie and how you have to see it on the big screen. And then I had another friend sitting there, and he said, I don't think so. You can just wait till DVD or Blu-ray and just watch it at home. I wanted to, at that moment, I turned into Joker and started dancing. It's just, it's like nothing made sense anymore. I just snapped as a person. That broke my heart, because this movie is a masterpiece. It is a technical marvel, like you said. I have it written down here, technical marvel. And you said the same words. I feel like this decade has been pushing the envelope in terms of what is possible in filmmaking, and it has ended with a huge bang with this movie. And like you said, there's no cuts, no breaks in the movie. The movie doesn't stop. This is insanely hard to do. Everything in the environment has to be set up and dressed so that wherever the characters and camera moves, all the details are there. And there's so much detail. There's things sticking out of the ground. There's debris. There's bodies. There's, bullets. It's crazy how much detail is in every shot. And obviously, the entire movie isn't one continuous takes, right? Like you said, there are hidden cuts and seams here that we don't really register as an audience. It was hard for me to find them as well. But they still had to shoot sequences continuously for several minutes at a time. And just imagine, within that one continuous take, if anything screws up, if a gun doesn't come out quickly enough, if a lighter doesn't work, if a line gets messed up, the take is ruined and you can't use it. So the precision of everyone involved has to be 100% on point, or else it doesn't work. The weather has to be on point. Everything is overcast in this movie. If it's not overcast, if there's sun, they can't shoot it because it's not consistent with the previous scene. It's just insane. No other movie of this scale has been done like this before. You think of Birdman, Gravity, The Revenant. I just think there's something about long takes that is so immersive for the audience.
Yes.
And I think this is the truest form of cinematic immersion, in my opinion, more so than 3D, which was, I feel like, a complete gimmick. And I'm so glad that phase, that era of cinema is kind of over. I don't know. We'll see when James Cameron comes back with Avatar. He's the one who kind of kicked off the craze. So, I mean, maybe he can instill life into it. But I feel like it's fading out, and I'm glad. I feel like IMAX and long takes, like that's the way to get us immersed. And
Yes.
I think at a lot of points during this movie, I actually felt like it was a video game. Right, we're following these characters as they trekked across different landscapes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just feel like the action feels so much more intense and thrilling because of the way it's done here. It's not a gimmick. It's done so tastefully and with purpose. Yeah, I love this film, and it is a technical marvel. I feel like it deserves all the accolades.
Yes, I agree. I want to agree with what you said about how it feels like a video game. In that a video game, you kind of feel like you're the character. You're taking in the world as the character. That was the same effect this film had on me. Yeah, like I was like hearing the footsteps, hearing the surrounding sounds. It was very immersive. And shout out to the two main actors, Dean Charles Chapman and George McKay, for nailing this. They with the long takes, they were spot on. I don't even want to think about how long they had to rehearse to get this, you know. But it was great. It was great. So our number 3, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, please go see it, and please see it in the cinema. All right.
Yes.
Get your butt into the seat in the theater, the biggest screen possible.
Yeah, I agree. I don't care if you have too much going on or you need to see Star Wars for the 6th time. Cancel that one and go see 1917 instead in Dolby Cinema or IMAX. Do not go to one of those side theaters. Like, that should be banned from this theatrical run. But we don't feel that strongly about it, so we should just move on.
All right, Job, here we go. Your number 2. Number 2 movie of 2019.
Number 2 is Little Women.
Whoa!
Like I said before, yeah, woo! Like I said before, give Greta Gerwig all the things. I thought this was a masterpiece movie. It was so beautiful. It was charming. All the actresses in this film were spot on. I came into it actually not having read the book, not having seen the previous film, so I actually came in fresh. I didn't know the story. I didn't know the characters. I didn't know anything really, and I was emotionally hooked and invested, as if I had known these characters forever, and that's just a testament to the acting prowess of Saoirse Ronan and Emma Watson and her name's escaping me right now.
Florence Pugh?
Yes, Florence Pugh. Those 3. And Laura Dern also. It just, all of these actresses together, just there's this crackling energy about them that also is so warm. It just doesn't feel sharp. It doesn't feel cynical. It just feels like family. And my wife comes from a family full of sisters, and they have one brother too. But I think this feels so familiar in that I've seen them all interact in similar ways, and it's just really lovely. Big families can be really chaotic, but they are also really beautiful. And this movie felt like a throwback to a bygone era where family was so important and was so huge. Even when people had individual dreams and aspirations, the family got together and like dreamed it with her, or and I think that's really lovely. And I pray and hope that one day our society can get back to family values that strongly. But until then, we'll always have Little Women to watch and enjoy.
Yeah, I love this film, and I think you put it so beautifully, right? The warmth of this film and just how sweet this family is. I totally agree. I mean, it is hard to decide between all these movies, right? Like we said, 2019, lots and lots of high-quality films. This one could have been easily my number 2 as well.
Nice.
My number 2 is A Hidden Life. This is a film written and
Nice.
directed by Terrence Malick, who is best known for making long, quiet films with very little narrative structure and stunning cinematography. They are more like visual poems than movies. And what I found so fascinating about this film is that Malick took his aesthetic and his style and applied it to a traditional narrative, I think for the first time. Because I think all his other movies are just really, there's no structure to it. It works so beautifully in this film. It's just the cinematography is just gorgeous. The way it captures the Austrian countryside landscapes. It's like it makes me want to go there and visit these locations. The film takes place during World War II. It's about an Austrian farmer and devout Catholic who refuses to fight for the Nazi army when he's drafted. And what I appreciate so much about this movie is this man's quiet determination to do what is right. He doesn't hold a rally. He doesn't shout it at the mountaintops. He doesn't post it on Twitter or Instagram. I mean, he can't because it's, World War II. But, my point is he's not trying to start a revolution. He has his own conviction and he just tries to live it out. And I think it just beautifully shows how someone's faith perseveres through external persecution. Everyone in the village, even the church, tries to get this man to change his mind, but he just wants to honor God, and he doesn't want to violate his conscience, and he kind of he goes against the grain, so to speak. So
Wow.
it's a fantastic film. It is also very long, and because it's quiet and there's a lot of silence, it may not be easy for some people to get through, but I think it's definitely worth a watch because of the subject matter, and I think it's very pertinent to today as well.
Wow. I did not see this film, but I want to watch it now. Thanks to your review.
Awesome. I I have a feeling I know what your number one is.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. So let's get to it. Number one movie.
Number one movie is Knives Out.
Yes.
This is such a good. Knives Out is my favorite movie of all of 2019. For a lot of the reasons you said, Mike, it's a subversion on the whodunit genre. The whodunit genre is kind of fun to me, but it's never been something I've sought out or been like, oh yeah, I definitely want to see that. I couldn't get myself to go watch Murder at the Orient Express. It's not a genre I'm that interested in. But when I heard that Rian Johnson, my favorite director, was doing a whodunit, I'm like, I want to watch it. I want to watch this whodunit. It's so good in that it kind of doesn't do what you think a whodunit would do. And I just can't talk too much about it without getting into spoilers, but it's just a fun ride. You don't have to, the movie is gentle in that you don't have to actually work that hard in your own head to kind of parse out what's going on. Unlike certain Christopher Nolan movies. You don't have to work too hard to think about like, no, it kind of guides you through, but this film isn't so much about the mystery as it is about the characters and also just how it plays out. And it's just delightful in that way. And so Knives Out is the number one movie of the year. I adore Rian Johnson's work. I love Brick. I love Brothers Bloom. I love Looper. I love The Last Jedi. I love this. I will love anything let's not get carried away here, but
things are looking good for his filmography now and the future.
Yeah, this is a great entry to that, and I couldn't pre-order the Blu-ray fast enough. I can't wait to dive back into this world.
Awesome. I'm actually really surprised to hear that you are not a fan of the whodunit genre. I thought you would be.
It's not so much that I don't like it. It's just it's not something I seek out, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah. So
I think that's like me and westerns. I'm just not as into westerns as some people. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any guesses to what my number one movie is?
Gosh, it can't be Star Wars.
Is definitely not.
I'm
No,
just
it's
kidding.
not Star Wars. My name's not Joe Bang, okay? All right, my number one movie.
Oh, I know what it. I know what it is. I know what it is.
Okay, what's your guess?
It's Are you okay if I get it right?
Yeah, I'm totally.
It's Avengers Endgame.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the arguments made for why people need to see movies in the theater is that experiencing cinema is a communal experience, right? You laugh together, you cheer together, you cry together as an audience. My theatrical experience for this movie is unmatched. There are movies where I've seen the crowd was memorable and ecstatic. The first Avengers movie was one of them. I remember The Matrix, that was another. But I've never watched a movie in theaters where it was perfectly okay to scream out loud at the top of your lungs, because everyone around us was doing it. I was convulsing in my seat. I was just so filled with pure joy. There's no other way to describe it. And as a kid who grew up on so many of these characters and going through the Marvel Cinematic Universe from its beginning, this was an enormous culmination of everything I love about this world. The way it brings together all these characters, like 24 of them, right, from all those movies, and how it weaves them together in a hugely satisfying and emotional conclusion. It feels so loving and tender how they treated this. I feel like this is the culmination, that kind of culmination I was looking for in The Rise of Skywalker. That's why I don't feel like that should be the end of the saga. I feel like that franchise deserves way more than what we got in Episode 9. Going back to Endgame, I love what I thought the movie, I love how what I thought the movie was going to be was actually covered in the first 20 minutes of the movie. I was shocked when I first saw it. It was a complete subversion of my expectations, and I was so excited to not know where the rest of the movie was going. Just the pure joy, is just utter joy. That's the only way I can describe the movie. I laughed, I was excited, I screamed more, and then I cried. I feel like this is cinema, right? This is what movies are meant to do. It's meant to impart feelings to its audience, and I feel like it's definitive for me. This is my favorite movie of the year. It's one of my favorite movies of the decade, actually. All right.
I'm so glad you love it.
Yeah, I'm surprised it didn't make your top 10, but I remember after the movie you did have some qualms about the storytelling, or some aspects of the storytelling.
Yeah, but I don't want to talk about that, dude. I'm really glad you enjoy it, and most of the qualms went away after repeat viewings anyway. So, yeah.
All right.
That's the thing about this year is it's a crowded top 10. Like, there were some films that should have made it in most other years. So,
yeah, it's it's hard. Honestly, my list kept changing as November began. Like, so many movies,
Yes.
so many great movies got pushed out of my top 10 because I just, it was hard. It was hard to decide, what should be in there. But,
Right.
you just got to go with what you feel. And I feel like the end of the year was really backloaded with all these amazing films.
Yeah, Terminator Dark Fate really worked hard to make it into my top 2, but just was having a hard time.
It came out in early November, so, all those other movies pushed it out, right? I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the movies that got pushed out, let's get to honorable mentions now.
Yeah.
I know our episode's already over an hour, so let's just
Let's get
just
going. Yeah.
say a quick blurb about it. Why don't you just give me all your honorable mentions, and I'll get to mine. So we won't switch on and off like that. You can just go through your list.
Sure. Yeah, I'll give like the 3 or 4 or 5. My top honorable mention, just barely making it outside of the top 10, was The Lighthouse, a film starring Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. It's terrifying. It's creepy. It gets under your skin. It crawls inside of you and threatens to eat your guts and makes you just feel less than human, matey. And but so well done. I would not recommend anyone seeing it if you're just kind of not into feeling gross. But that's how effective this movie was in making that happen. So The Lighthouse It's shot in black and white. It's shot on film. It looks gorgeous. It's also really scary. Not in a horror movie type of sense, but it just creeps you out. So really good. Joker was up there too. It just kind of got pushed out towards the end of the year by all the other films. We've talked a lot about that. And then 3 honorable mentions that would have made it in most years, but are pretty like blockbustery to me, is Godzilla King of Monsters, Spider-Man Far From Home, and Avengers Endgame. All 3 of those I did enjoy a lot and found a lot of entertainment value out of. They're not masterpieces of cinema. Martin Scorsese won't be watching those anytime soon, but they are really fun. I enjoyed them a lot. I watched Spider-Man Far From Home at midnight, and came away feeling like I wanted to just stay awake the rest of the day because I was so excited. Godzilla was a lot of fun. It was disappointing in that it was yet another monster movie that about the title character that didn't show the title character that much. And Endgame we just talked about. I had qualms with it at first. I did enjoy it. I did scream along with you, Mike. You heard me. And came away with a few nitpicks, but at the end of the day, the nitpicks are not that important in a movie like this. And before people say, oh, like you're just dumbing it down for your own personal enjoyment, that's not what I mean. Is what is the purpose of a movie? Is it to wrap up 20 plus films before it? Is it to just give you that cathartic ending? If that's the purpose of it, this movie succeeds beyond any expectations I had. So those are some of my honorable mentions. Another one is Ready or Not. I really like Ready or Not, but anyway, I'm talking too long, I think.
All right. Yeah, I have actually a lot of overlap with you for honorable mentions. I'll just talk about them right now. So I have a Ford v Ferrari. That's in there. Spider-Man Far From Home. Ready or Not. That's a movie about, it's a really low budget, small movie. It takes place in one location, but it's really exciting. Lots of action, surprisingly, and suspense. Highly recommend that one. Although very R-rated and very violent, so avoid that. Yes. if you're not into that thing. I really loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and The Farewell. Now, here's some movies that weren't mentioned by Job. I really liked Blinded by the Light. It's a movie about a Pakistani British teenager who falls in love with Bruce Springsteen's music. Jojo Rabbit, written and directed by Taika Waititi. It's a very charming childhood coming-of-age type movie set in Nazi Germany. He somehow blends a very serious and dark situation with the levity of childhood perfectly, in my opinion. Another honorable mention is Dr. Sleep. It's a sequel to The Shining, starring Ewan McGregor. And it's totally unlike The Shining. It actually feels more like a comic book film set in a horror genre. Really love the storytelling and characters in that one. I really love the 2 documentaries, Apollo 11, which is about the moon landing, and the way they cleaned up old footage from the 1960s to make it look like it was shot in 2018. It was stunning to look at. And another one was Fire, F-Y-R-E. You can find this on Netflix, but it's a really great documentary that talks about the disastrous fire festival. And so all these movies actually were in my top 10 at one point in the year, and they were all pushed out because the year just ended so strongly. And I just want to mention one movie that I did not get to see, and I really wanted to because of all the reviews, but it was in limited release, and you can only see it if you're in New York and LA, and who has time to drive to LA, right? But that's a Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I really want to see that. I'm sure it's a great film. I just didn't get a chance to see it. All right, so there was our top 10 and our honorable mentions. Let's now look ahead to 2020. Job, I just want to hear your 5 most anticipated films. You can give your in however order that you want.
Sure. I'm gonna go fun with this one. Not so much like art house movies that I'm excited about, but just stuff I'm jazzed about, even if I know they're not gonna be that good. Bill and Ted Face the Music. I love Bill and Ted, the movies, and it's coming out with Keanu. Anything with Keanu Reeves, I'm excited about. I'm excited for Godzilla vs. Kong, for the same reasons I enjoyed King of Monsters. I'm excited for Tenet, Christopher Nolan's mysterious movie, of which we still have no idea what it's about. I'm excited for Mulan, the live-action movie. If any of you have listened enough to our podcast, we're not huge fans of the live-action remakes, but this sounds like it's not a remake so much as a reimagining, and looks like it's kind of more about the historical legend of Mulan. But anyway, it looks fun. And Top Gun. Top Gun is a movie I am so excited to see as well. Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise working together equals mission. That is mission. So I'm excited for that.
Awesome.
Top Gun Maverick. Top Gun Maverick, not the original Top Gun.
Right. All right. My my number 5 most anticipated movie of the year is A Quiet Place Part 2. Loved the first film. It was one of my favorite movies of 2017 when it came out. It put me on the edge of my seat the entire time. Amazing concept. I can't wait to see that world expanded. My number 4 is Top Gun Maverick. Tom Cruise flying jets is extremely enticing, but I think what it actually makes me really excited about this. I know the prospect of Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie, that team together again, is very strong and exciting. But I'm really excited by the fact that this is actually directed by Joseph Kosinski, the guy who did Tron Legacy and Oblivion, which also starred Tom Cruise. I feel like the guy is a visual artist. He creates such bombastic, sensory, theatrical experiences. He mixes music so well with clean visuals. I think he's the perfect guy to take the reins for Top Gun. And already from the trailers, it looks stunning. So I can't wait. I will definitely be seeing that with you. My number 3 is Ghostbusters Afterlife. I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan. The first 2 movies are they were the ones that you kind of wore out the VHS tapes from watching it too much. The trailer for this movie made me believe in this film. How it reintroduces the Ghostbusters 30 years later is kind of like how The Force Awakens brought back Star Wars after 4 years. I think that it's the way that they're doing it is perfect. It's exciting. There's so much nostalgia in that trailer, and I can't wait to see who shows up from the original cast. My number 2 is Dune. I've never read the book or seen the David Lynch film. I've heard about it, but never got around to doing it. In 2020, I'll finally get to the Dune story, and that's because of one man, freaking Denis Villeneuve. Enemy, Sicario, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049. He's a freaking artist making one sci-fi masterpiece after another. They said that this is somewhere in between Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. Oh my God, I'm sold. I'm there opening night. Let's go see it. And my number 1 movie of the most anticipated movie of the year is Tenet. Any year we get a Christopher Nolan film, you know it's going to be a big year. The guy can make whatever movie he wants with 100% creative control, with whatever budget he wants. No other filmmaker today has such command over his craft at the blockbuster stage like Christopher Nolan. It's an original story. We don't know no one knows what it's about, except maybe your wife who is working on it. But yeah, it's not like she told us, right? So I can't wait. I'm actually planning a 10-week Christopher Nolan marathon. I'm gonna watch one Christopher Nolan movie a week. Job, you're welcome to join. But I'm so excited. Yeah, we're going to be there. We're going to see this in IMAX opening night, opening week. So
70 millimeter IMAX.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question, right?
Yes, no question.
All right,
Mike,
so
this was a fun conversation.
Yeah, it was one that I was really excited about, and it didn't disappoint. I really enjoyed talking to you about these awesome movies, and can't wait for this year. This year, I feel like it's going to be another strong year, hopefully. in movies. All right. Do you have anything else that you want to add, or should we wrap up?
No, I do want to say, like, we started this podcast talking about 2018 top movies, and the fact we've reached this point, talking about another year of movies, is really enjoyable and gratifying. So thanks for coming along on this ride, everyone who's still kind of listening, and thanks, Mike, for being a great podcast partner.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot. Our very first episode was top 10 films of 2018. A long time ago, we talked about starting a movie podcast together, and we had recorded our top 10 films of, I think, 2016 or something.
That's right.
Yeah.
We should release that.
Release the Snyder Cut. Eventually, probably, when I think we're a little bit better. I think we still have a ways to go.
A lot to do.
Yeah. But I honestly, it's been a lot of fun podcasting with you. Just to be able to have a conversation about movies and to talk about it more in depth rather than just write like an article online or on our blog. So I think that's what we were doing before we started doing this. We were just reviewing movies like on our blog, writing a brief article. But I feel like in this format it's a conversation, and we can go really in depth on points that we really want to talk about. And so far I feel like our movies, all the movies that we talked about in 2019, we kind of agreed on. Maybe we'll have some more differing opinions this year. All right. Well, thank you, those of you who are still listening. It's an hour and 16 minutes into this podcast. Thank you so much for supporting us, and we'll see you next time.
See you all next time. Thank you.